Welcome to the Customer Wins podcast, where business leaders discuss their secrets and techniques for helping their customers succeed and in turn grow their business.
Hi, I'm Rich Walker, the host of the Customer Wins, where I talk to business leaders about how they help their customers win and how their focus on customer experience leads to growth. Today, I'm speaking with Rick Burgess, CEO of Forms Logic. And today's episode is brought to you by Quick, the leader in enterprise forms automation. When the last step to earning your client's business requires filling out paperwork, don't ruin your relationship with a bad experience. Instead, get Quick Forms to make filling out forms a great experience and the easiest part of your transaction. Visit quickforms.com to get started. Now, Rick Burgess is the CEO and founder of Forms Logic and has been leading and innovating in the financial services space for over 20 years. Starting as a futures trader, to rising as the national sales manager for Results One Financial, to starting several companies, including Connect Lending and Forms Logic, Rick has always been passionate about making things easier and better in financial services. Today, Forms Logic brings company into a fully digital world with forms-based workflows that eliminate the need to even look at the forms. Thoroughly hands-on, Rick works closely with his clients to understand their needs and apply the right Forms Logic technology to solve their problems. As I like to say, as a partner, Forms Logic brings the logic to our forms. Rick, welcome to the Customer Wins.
Pleasure to be here.
Now, if you haven't heard this podcast before, I talk with business leaders about what they're doing to help their customers win, how they built and deliver a great customer experience, and the challenges to growing their own company. Rick, let's understand your business a little bit better. How do you help people?
Well, I mean, the elevator pitch is always, I fill out forms better than anyone on earth. And then the elevator shuts and very awkward silence for the next 9 floors. The best way to describe it is if you want to fill out one PDF, that's not us, right? You want to have complex data that talks to different people, that goes all kinds of different places. That's what we do better than most people.
Yeah, and I know when we started working together, what you showed me with your business and your product was just mind-blowing. Honestly, you were years ahead of everybody else from what I saw. I don't necessarily want to compare you to TurboTax, but you were eliminating the need to look at the forms, right?
Copyright TurboTax, by the way.
Yeah, right.
So when we've talked about this outside of this podcast before, is really we're a data company more than anything else. Forms and workflows just happens to be a byproduct of the data. And that translates to other places other than financial service. And, there's a lot of legacy problems with forms.
Yeah. And I always said that the reason people create forms is because it's cheap. It's almost free, right? Anybody in your company can create a form and hand it out to a customer. Yep. And worse, when you think about it that way, you're saying to the customer, you do the work for us. You handwrite all this stuff. Who is your primary customer base, Rick?
So we've got government, and we came out of some government and some lending work, and then we got yanked in, kicking and screaming, mind you, to financial services because of a bad relationship my partner made. And it's a great story, but I went upstairs to change after a conference. And by the time I got down, he had promised a broker dealer a set of forms. I was like, don't do it. Run away. 6 months later, we had from a tire forms company all the way to the Jetsons, if you will. And I've never looked back since.
Yeah. And I know you work with wealth management today. I mean, if we fast forward to today, so is it RIAs, is it broker dealers, is it product companies? In the
financial service space, let's just say that, right? We actually do 2 insurance companies, 3 or 4 small custodians, a lot of alts, because they're good at managing money, bad at managing their paperwork. Broker dealers, RIAs, third-party asset managers. I mean, for us, the data is the data. The same number is going to go on and the same, stuff. And what people are missing is the ability to have a good customer experience by not having to type your name 3 times, right? And do it in different places. That's the key.
Yeah. Now, you're not just filling out forms, though. I mean, you're helping with, what are all the different types of business processes that you assist with?
So, this is an interesting thing. It's this concept of gold standard of data. Where does the data sit, reside, and get talked to, right? So it doesn't matter where it starts at, it's where it's held after the fact. So a great example is, I think we integrate with like 6 or 7 CRMs. So you start there, you pull it down from there, then you'll work on it with us. We'll fill that contract, we'll fill that paperwork out for you through our process. At the end of that process, we're probably sending it to a custodian, a product, and back to the client, not just the client, but actually the advisor, the BD. We're updating their CRM, we're updating their other CRM, we're updating their business process place. So it's the ability to take that data once and put it into a usable format to put it in 9, 10 different places all at the same time, right? That's what we do.
So being a technologist like yourself, we get this. This is our language. I don't know that everybody else understands the magic of what this means. For years and years, there's all this fragmentation of technology. Like, it's all about integrations. How do we get this to work with this and that to that? And what you just said is you've just become the center point of data to share across all these other systems.
So what you and I experience on a daily basis, let me give it to somebody in a different way. When one of our clients back in the day was a car dealership, and you don't think about it very much, but the guy takes your ID and he scans it before the test drive. That creates a client record. When he comes back and he starts writing stuff down, they've already pulled your DMV record, they've already pulled your credit, they've already pulled all this stuff. By the time you sit down to talk about what car, your contracts are already done. Everything's already done. And then, the guy that ran the car dealership goes, I don't want it that way. I want him to sit in that seat for a long time and feel uncomfortable. And I said, great, go play cards. They don't need to know that it's all done, right? And then what really blew everyone's mind was I said, okay, do you realize that the guy that test drove your car is now going to be your agent to talk about the financing? Because all the paperwork's already done. I already pulled in all the partner paperwork they had. But then once the guy bought the car or girl bought the car, we updated their service record CRM and their drip CRM for oil changes and all that other stuff. That's the last leg that everyone forgets about, is once they become a client, how do you retain them as a client? How do you service them? Take financial service, it's the same thing.
So does that mean that I think about this from an advisor perspective, because I was an advisor. You work really hard to earn the trust and respect of a client. And what are you doing during that period of time? Maybe early on, you ask for client discovery information. Tell me about your assets, et cetera. Where does that go? Oh, it probably goes into my planning system so I can create a plan and tell you what you should be doing. But it takes months before they say, let's fill out the paperwork and do the transaction. Mm-hmm. And then past that, I still want to keep in contact with them. So how are you fitting into that kind of flow and circle for advisors?
Sure. So easy one to think of, and this is something that will blow most people's minds, but you and I know this for a fact. I can take a form that has all the same data as a Charles Schwab, a TD, a Pershing, a Fidelity, any of those things. You co-create it, make it pretty, make it yours, make it look good. I can map first name from that form over to Schwab or TD or Pershing. No problem. So you're creating this customer experience that is super intriguing and super personalized, but in the background, they're just filling out forms for something that's going to happen later, right? Another interesting thing, and you said it, that TurboTax view, when you fill out a form, you're not going to collect any data that's not relevant on a form from a custodian or someone like that. When we flick a button, we flip into a different view. That view almost looks like TurboTax. Ask a question, it drives the next question, right? Mm-hmm. I could ask how many kids you got. That has nothing to do with any answer on any form anywhere you and I would ever deal with, but it will in your financial planning software. It will somewhere else. It will. So you can actually collect data that has nothing to do with the transaction, but everything to do with servicing and secondary transactions.
Man, you're right. I hadn't thought about that. And I often tell people, if you can eliminate the need to look at the form, you should. What we can't eliminate is the need to collect the data.
Correct.
And the challenge you and I both talked about, in fact, the reason we met is because we can't eliminate the need for the third party who designed the form to get their form, right? Fidelity wants their form, Pershing wants their form. And at the end of the day, they want their data, but they still want their form. And so that's why we're in business.
But so that's you asked, you told me, Connect Lending, right? So we actually built what we did because we had too many people filling out forms. So I had 3,000 lenders and it was a loan matching system, and it was and I had advisors as my clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we had more people working for us that were filling out forms. I don't know if you know this, but a bank really wants their forms filled out. They don't want my forms.
Yeah.
Just like a custodian doesn't want my forms, they want their forms. So we didn't know about you, and this was 20 years ago. You were probably just getting started then. We were filling out forms by hand. 3 people wanted to match, 3 forms were filled out by hand. Finally, my partner Fred came up and said, this is out of hand. This is the head count and the fixed overhead was out of hand. So we built this little piece of software to map a first name, because it's the same net. Most of the things we do, Rich, is 85% of the same stuff is on every form. It's the last little bit that's customized to a form. It's the same contact information. It's the same identifier information, all that. So all we did was we kind of built this process to map forms. Worm technology, right?
Sure.
Write once, read many. We created map technology, write once, map many. So it was kind of like this. It was a business decision we made. And then once we sold Connect Lending, it was like, well, this is a company. We have to keep doing something with this. And one of our, like I said, our broker dealer client, we were at a convention and Dodd-Frank, more forms, more regulation, everyone's groaning,
Right.
and partner hits me and goes, we can fix that. I go, don't even think about it. You have no idea what you're talking about. And I think today we manage, almost 450,000 forms across every client set.
Man, no, it's incredible. So we've talked about, why you wanted to do this. What has changed along the way? I mean, you started with a car dealership and now it's financial services.
We started with a lender.
Okay.
And then we said, oh, wait, this is easy. A form's a form to me and you, right? It's easy.
Yeah.
It's the stuff you do with it afterwards. So we made mistakes by taking clients that we shouldn't have, because it was forms. But what you learn is you learn a lot of great lessons on a car dealership has a self-built process in the background. It's not like a financial service firm where, you got 3 choices for your CRM, right? So we had to become very good at normalizing data and transitioning data through things. So we did a healthcare company for a doctor's office, right? Why do you have to fill out that form every time you show up?
Yeah. Right.
So we basically built this doctor's office a quick, app on the form, not quick, but you're
Yeah.
So, and then when you got there, you put the last 4 of your social in, and the iPad brought up your thing and said, click here to accept this. And in 30 seconds, you were checked in, right? It was that fast.
Yeah.
And so we proved we can do it. But then the second part of that was the doctor's office is like, this is fantastic. How do I get it into my hospital's record keeping system? They wouldn't let us in the front door because they're like, who are you? That's why we do these. We scan them and someone types them in. And we've played with all kinds of ways to get data from handwritten into the system. And you and I talk about this. OCR doesn't work. ChatGPT, I love the technology. I love all that, but doesn't work quite yet. So at the end of the day, even if you scan something, you're going to look at every single line item, because if you get it wrong, it's the same thing as typing it over again.
Right. So let's talk about your entrepreneurial journey. Because I've seen this so many times, and myself included, you kind of follow the shiny object. Oh, cars, healthcare, broker dealer came to me, government's talking to me. How do you choose? And why did you choose wealth management?
Wealth management was the easiest because when we met each other. I don't know if you remember this, because I was looking for an RBC form. And I couldn't find the most current up-to-date RBC form. So I went current RBC form. Quick showed up. And I went to click the button and they said, call us if you want this form. oh, what do you mean I got to call you to get the form? And that's sort of when we talked and became a partner, or client of yours. And that was because the broker dealer kind of showed us the fact that it's RBC only is one company, but it touches hundreds and hundreds of clients, right? So this idea of coming out of a wholesaler, right? If you could do the work once and not have to do it a second time, why wouldn't you do that? So we mapped all the forms with, and then we started adding our technology, past what you helped us with. And that's what made it like, why would we ever move? Why would we ever leave financial service? Because until we own all of it, and we're never going to own all of it, because the fun part about financial services, someone's always smarter than the company they're working with, and they're going to leave and create an RIA or a new BD, which is brand new forms, brand new process, brand new thing. So it'll never end. But at the end of the day, to us, a form's a form's a form. If I ingest it one time, just once, we have it.
Yeah. No, I feel the same way. It's interesting because financial services is this deep pool of different companies and all their different forms and all their processes. And something you said earlier is that realistically, all these companies are the same. They all think they're different, and I respect that they have different ways of earning.
We call them snowflakes. They're all snowflakes.
Yeah, they have their secret sauce. They have their unique value proposition. They have their way of selling their product. But I don't think the business process of processing forms or opening accounts is the competitive advantage for anybody. Other than if you can do it faster and cheaper, you can have higher profitability. You can retain your advisors more. But in essence, I mean, I think you're right that data is data. And so you honed in on financial services having this very distinct need that was highly repetitive across companies, right? And look, I know this because I've been working with you. Often what I hear is you go talk to a customer and you basically show them the system they want in their own name with their own forms on the first demo.
Yep. It's already built. You want to pay for it or not? That's sort of how we demo things.
And I bet people are a little bit confused by that.
Yes. Because so put it this way. So my partner, Fred, came from a long history, right? And the one thing he built was boxes. He built code boxes. And the best way to think about it is a Lincoln log. If you create your Lincoln log building, right? And you say, oh, I want a new addition to my Lincoln log building. It's okay, use the same Lincoln logs. You don't have to rebuild the log to do another thing. So account processing or, account this or account management is a box. And that's all it is. And you might tell me you're a snowflake and you have something new or different or cool. Really, all that means is you want it painted red instead of white. That's it. And you want me to remove things. So today, right now, we talk to very big companies. And I go to a big company and they go, we are so different and special. I go, great. And by the time I'm done with the first demo, I'm taking 75% of what we built out of the platform because they just don't need it. It's the little RIA, it's the little BD that has this cool, unique thing that I'm like, I want that. I want to code it. And our model is simple. I code everything for free. Any new upgrade, I code it for free on my dime, as long as I get to own the code and push it out into my community. So everybody. So like you said, the customer wins. In my model, my customers tell me what I'm missing and they tell me what upgrades need to happen. I don't live in an ivory tower. I live in the trenches, right? So when a client smacks me and goes, you did it wrong. I didn't do it wrong. You didn't give me any requirements. I did the best I could with what you told me you wanted.
Yeah. And
then they paint it green and they change it. But what they've really done is they've defined a new box for me. So I can slide in, plug in. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, the development that they told you was going to be 2 years or a year, I got it done in 12 days.
Well, kudos to you, man. I think that's really, really hard to accomplish as software and tech. I mean, I know all companies are trying to think modularly, but to do what you described is actually very, very hard to do.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a different type of question. What is one of your favorite customer success stories? How did you help them win? How did you transform them? What was their outcome?
Okay. I'm not going to name names. Okay. But it was a broker.
Okay.
Dealer. It was a broker dealer. And my partner has a philosophy. Clients don't know what they want until they see what they don't want, which means give them something. And I hate the term minimum viable product, but it's applicable here, right? So if you say minimum, why didn't you put more time in? Make it at least maximum, somewhat maximum, right? So anyways, we created this system and we gave it to the broker dealer, and I had 17 pages in a Word document of what was wrong, what I did right, what I did wrong. And I took this back to my partner and I said, we got work to do. And one by one, we knocked out every single thing. It took us 2 years basically to get everything right. Those upgrades that were 10 years ago, almost 8 years ago, are the core of what our company is today. And that BD that doesn't even exist anymore. It was bought into the roll of tape that somebody was bought because of the tech stack they had, which was us. So that client is still using me, but they're inside of somebody else now. But it was really interesting that, if you just listen to your client, they'll tell you what you did wrong. The difference is, can you fix it and help everybody else? If it's super unique, super different, and no one else is going to use it, you got to pay for that. But this BD was giving us the blocking and tackling of, hey, a box has 4 sides and they're all equal. Why does it look weird? So we fixed it, So that was my favorite client because they were honest with us. They said, hey, we'll let you fix it, but just fix it. And after 2 years of really, really painful look in the face, don't call my baby ugly, we came out with this gangly teenager that was running along, and it's like, okay, this is company. We got to pay attention to this. We've been onboarding ever since.
No, I love that. It is hard to listen to customers, and it's also hard to find customers willing to go through the growth pains of an early stage company. I mean, we all have those experiences when we do our startups and we get to this point of maturity. And personally, I'm super grateful for those early adopters because there is a lot of pain and growth that you go through. But again, I also totally agree with you. If you can truly listen to that customer and hear not only what their pain is, but what they want their outcome to be. And here's the hard part, I think, in the tech world. And Rick, tell me if this happens to you. Customers will come to me and say, this is technically what I want. And I'll have to say, stop. Tell me what the problem is and let me tell you technically how to solve it, because that's my skill. Do you get into those types of problems?
Every single call. Because invariably they read something online or they talked to some consultant or and what I fight more than anything, and Rich, you'll appreciate this. When I walk into a BD, they have a guy that's a coder that sits in the corner and helps them with their IT stuff.
Sure.
A good coder, what, $120,000, $150,000, right? Something like that. Maybe more. And he's a coder. He's not a financial service guy, right? So he knows A to B to C to E equals some code of some sort. The problem is a lot of times that guy has no clue what the financial service world really means and what they're really asking for. So, we come up against those CTOs and people like that all the time. And it's like, hey, listen, I'm happy you built what you built, but you do realize you're not compliant here. You're doing this wrong. That's not going to work. The way you hold data is not going to integrate into anything. So that's another $150,000 project you have to take on. So, we run into that constantly because there's so much misinformation in the world, because not everyone knows what you and I know after 20 years of doing this.
This podcast is about how you help customers win, but I also think that how customers can help themselves win is to listen to their technology partners and partner with them. As I have found, the best success is when I'm working with a CTO, a technical person who really is very smart and has done a lot of great things, but is starting with a myopic view or lockstepped into a path that's not going to go where they want to go. Our best success is when they're open-minded and stop and say, Rich, what do you think? Rick, how do you guys solve this problem? What's the best of both worlds here? And I'm
So
sure you probably have similar.
to that point, and this is that whole we create boxes conversation. You have legacy systems that sometimes have great cost attached to them, right? And people don't want to admit that they made a mistake 2 years, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, right? And they have a system that doesn't work. They've made it work. The problem is when you start talking to these clients, there's these ghost programs. If you ever heard of a ghost program, it's a spreadsheet that someone uses to take something out of the system and upload it somewhere else. It's a ghost process that no one even knows exists. And the CTOs are stunned by when they find one. The key to our success is we can put the data in the way you want to ingest it. But then when we pull it out, we can ingest it in our world again, and then move it through the systems again. So the ability to work with these sort of Frankenstein systems that have been cobbled together over the years is why we win so much business, is because I'm not here to replace that thing. I'm just here to make everything work around it. And then over time, the contract expires, the CTO leaves, something happens, and then we can just plug in the next box. But every time we do that, it just takes a little longer. It takes a little more effort, right?
Yeah.
And what I found is, and customer wins, right? This is a funny conversation. It's my biggest problem is I sit on these first demos and these first conversations of deployment. I go, okay, here's someone explain to me from the moment an advisor talks to a client to the moment you process business. Can someone explain that journey to me? Who touches it, what happens, all the little nooks and crannies. And I document all of that. And I do what you do now, because you gave me this advice. Video record every conversation, because they will say things and tones will change and you miss it the first time. But the second or third time you watch that to get requirements, you really do notice that Julie in the corner is really angry about something. And when she talks, there's passion there. And that passion is got to be addressed, right? By the second or third conversation, it's like, okay, now take that hat off and now put your other hat on and tell me what you want the system to do. And nobody can define that, because when you rip all those Band-Aids off and you say, okay, I can fix all of this, but you got to tell me what I'm fixing. Tell me what you want to be efficient. And that's where, after hundreds of clients now, we can slap something in front of them that says, this is the best use of our system today across all of our firms. Let's start with that, Clay, and then tell me where your snowflakes land, right? Where are you different?
Yeah.
And that's how we can deploy so fast.
Yeah. No, that's an art and a talent to recognize those underpinnings of people. And I've seen it so many times too, because you have somebody really excited about, oh, we're going to do this and this. And you see the other person going, I don't know about that.
Yeah,
we didn't address this problem.
Yeah. I've been on those, and Zoom has been wonderful for those bodily motions, right?
Oh, I know. So Rick, let me ask you a totally different question. Having been in this business now for a while, working with so many different clients, you've found your calling in financial services. How has helping your customers win changed you? I know it's changed your product, but how has it changed you, or maybe even your overall company?
So it's interesting because whenever we find, because times change, and our favorite saying is, any product that sits still is going to be disregarded in a year or two, right? So it's got to be evolving and growing. So when my clients bring me these new problems, Reg BI, Form CRS was, this because you deal with the forms, was a nightmare for 6 months, right? So how do you take 100 and some firms you and I deal with, thousands for maybe you, and listen to their interpretation of a law and fix your system to account for everybody's different interpretation, right? So that those kinds of challenges make it so by the second or third or fourth time you hear a client, you're helping other clients with, well, here's how everybody else is doing it. What do you want? So we almost become consultative in this groupthink environment. And it really is super, super rewarding when you can shorten someone's distance that you can tell they're struggling with, or you can tell they're having problems with. And from that point, they become an evangelist for you, right? Because you've helped them. Because things that they didn't think were possible or very possible, but they just don't think of things as a big firm would think of things, right? And big firms don't think of things that little firms think of. So from that standpoint, when my clients start making decisions and I can get those best decision-making processes in place, then it's just turning people on and off and asking them if they want to adopt it right now. And we can sort of change it over time as they, figure some more things out. But, what ends up happening is, those initial customers that we work with that help us define what those rule changes are, how it's affecting everything. I'm not a financial fiduciary expert.
Right.
If you ask me how to fill out some of the forms that I support, I have no clue, but they do, right?
Right.
And they tell me when things are right or wrong. They help us grow. So, in our culture, in our company, we are literally building, what's a good way to say it, a environment, a community where any great idea is given to the whole community to evaluate and use or work with. That's really what makes us grow and our for people happy, is that call a client, ask them if there's something we're doing wrong. What do they want to upgrade? And they're being listened to because we're getting requirements and we're building stuff. And the constant building and constant deployment is what, my coders, which, they usually build things for days or weeks or months or years, some cases. In a big firm, they might never see it come out.
Yeah.
In my world, it's don't hit that button because it goes live today, right now, as soon as you hit it. Let's test it first. And they get this rich, rewarding experience of seeing their little piece working and clients using it. Most of them don't like it when a client tells them something's wrong, but that's part of the growth of the company, right?
Yeah.
My new onboarders and support staff are constantly engaged with our clients. Tell me what's going on. Tell me are you having successes? Tell me what those successes are. Tell me what those challenges are. I can help a challenge. I can't help a success because we've solved something, right?
Right.
But we want to step on those and keep growing.
Yeah. Yeah. Something you said is something I really love in my own business. And that is the ability to hear so many different perspectives on a single problem, coalesce that into a solution or a commonality, an underlying thread, and then share that with everybody else as it comes across. I love that because that's where I feel like we add so much more value than just what our technology can do. It's our experience and shared experiences.
We think we're thought leaders, but we're just thought aggregators.
Yeah, right. So let's talk about innovation and future stuff. You already mentioned Chat GPT, which is the newest darling of the artificial intelligence world. And I've certainly been playing with it like crazy since it came out. But we can go forever on AI. I just want to ask you kind of a pointed question. How do you see artificial intelligence changing or impacting the customer experience and maybe even your own experience that you deliver?
It's a great question. So where I've seen it being used in our space currently is allow it to go out and go to the public databases and pull client data in from a bunch of different sources and say, is this you, right? Do you live at this address? So clients already being prompted to click a button and say, yeah, I live at 123 Main Street. As soon as you say that, it goes, fills out all that information, right? So it's these if you think that there's no data out there about you, you're wrong. It's everywhere out there.
So much data.
Right. So much data. But, to have one of these bots crawling through, profiles on Facebook and Twitter and, all these places. And maybe if it can offer you, do you work at Quick? Is this you? Is this your email address at Quick? Things like that will be very, very impactful to people like you and I, because it's just another data source. Chat GPT will never become a data engine that takes data and implements it in different various ways, because there's still human interpretation there.
Yeah.
It'll shorten the distance between connectivity, but it will never replace it. And here's a great reason why. You ever work at a company, and maybe you maybe not because it's been so long, but you go to a bank and the bank is still using Vista, right? Why are they using Vista?
Oh, I
because it's
know.
the most stable, and I'm pulling back history here, because it's the most stable build that's secure and has no problems. So these big companies, and you and I deal with monstrous companies, right? Huge monstrosities, custodians, right? They have trillions of dollars under their wing. Do you really think they're going to plug in a AI and start letting it start running through all that data without some leashes on it? Blockchain, you've heard of things like blockchain, right? You've heard of blockchain?
Of course.
There's this little fun thing where it's going to change our world, right? Nobody has adopted it yet. Nobody's accepted it yet. We actually have a small blockchain function that we use for our clients, right? We embedded it. It's a cost. Most people have no idea how to use it, no idea what to do with it.
Yeah.
I just heard an article that I think we were talking about earlier. ChatGPT's biggest users are hackers that are just programming it to go out and look at all these places that can go. So, for every great thing that is done with technology, there's two bad things that happen from it. So until ChatGPT and AI and all that sort of settle into a common usage pattern, right? And everyone can be predictable on how it's going to outcome. It's going to be years before we see it impact our business as far as a massive displacement of what we do. But we're looking at it, we're utilizing it, but internally in an email system is extraordinarily different than letting it play with client data.
Yeah. No, I think that's smart. And I mean, this goes back to your roots of being a data company, and really the fundamentals of what you and I do are both about the data. I've always seen it that way. Forms are data collection devices. They're visual displays of data. So really what we care about is the data model: first name, last name, social, et cetera. And
Yep.
One of the things you said that I think is important to point out is if you can use AI to help collect that data or source the data without having the user type it or even tell you, and just validate it. Though I'm reminded of its foibles, because not long ago I was at a car dealership and they pulled up my profile and they're like, "Is this your email?" I'm like, "No, not my email. Don't know how you got that. Nothing even close to my email." So it always requires that human intervention.
Yep.
And if I could put one other point on this, I also think of like financial planning. Just because you have a financial plan doesn't mean you know the reality. The reality is the markets tanked last year. What did that do to your plan? Guess what? You're going to do a new plan now and say, where am I today? And so I think there's always got to be human intervention with these things.
Oh, the AI will just tell you to retire 10 more years from now.
Yeah.
Yeah. The bedside manner still has a little bit to be monitored here.
Yeah. So Rick, you've got some very unique things that you've done in your life and in your career. What are some secrets or a key lesson that you could share with other business leaders for how they might win more customers?
This might sound horrible, but have some brain damage, just a little bit of it, so that you could actually continue to work on a project that nobody seems to care about, and yet it ends up being a big win. You and I have shared this story many times. Why did you get into forms? Because you hated them as an advisor, right? How many years have you ate ramen before you figured it out? How many years did you fight with people that why are the tax brackets at your form different than the other form? And why, these things that we've solved already are minor problems in our world now. But when you first get into it, it's like, how do I get a custodian to change their form? You don't. You just have to figure out how to make it work. So there are a lot of times where you're working on these concepts, ideas. How did you normalize 7,000, 8,000 forms? By a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of brain damage, and not a lot of money to do it, right? You have to build something before it becomes sellable. We had our dark years of dealing with things we got wrong. We thought this is how it was supposed to go, but it's not. We had to do it this way. And then the moment you finish, the moment you have it in your hand, it's sand, right? A new law changes and you can't do it that way. You have to do it this way. So you have to do it a different way. So at the end of the day, I think this idea that you have to let everybody else fall away and say, that's not a good idea. You don't really have to do it that way. And say, no, I have a dream and that's how it's going to go. We could have got here and ChatGPT could have just been, ding, we're out of business. That's a
Right.
risk business owner, right? It just so happens that nobody wants to get into forms.
Yeah.
Nobody is spending hours and hours figuring this out, because why would they?
I know there was a great commercial showing kids saying, when I grow up, I want to be a yes man. I want to go to the office every day and type on a keyboard. And my own joke is, nobody at age 12 raised their hand and said, when I grow up, I want to fill out forms.
Right.
Nobody ever.
My favorite thing is I walked through an incubator, one of those IT incubators downtown Chicago here. And everyone was like, they were looking at me like I was a dinosaur walking along lumbering, right? They're like, that's the forms guy. And I was there to do a talk or something. And they're like, oh, we all build our applications to just ingest all this stuff and all that. And I kept listening to all of them as I was, sort of off talking. And then I got up to the stage and I go, great. Has anyone ever heard of the FDIC? Everyone raised their hand. I go, does anyone have the code to talk to their servers? And everyone's looking around. I'm like, that's right. You ingested your version and your way, and you have no idea how the rest of the world talks to each other. Enjoy your new apps you're building. And I walk off. And that was like dropping a firebomb. It's like, no, the world is not going to revolve around what you decide is the standard, right? You have to kind of stitch standards together before you can create a standard.
Yeah.
And that's really why, a little bit of brain damage and a lot of drive is what created what we have.
Yeah. Persistence is the key for sure. Rick, as we wrap this up, I do have another question, but before we get there, what is the best way for people to connect and find you?
Well, call Rich Walker first and find out if you're his client. And then if you want anything other than that, come to see me. But no, formslogic.com, and there's a little, request a demo or find us, or Rich, would you please put my contact info at the bottom of this podcast in the comments? And then they can always reach out to us. I have people that will return calls, or I'll do it. It's not hard to find us, Forms Logic, and nobody wants that URL on Google. So we're it.
Awesome. Okay, here's my last question. Who is a leader that you're following or being inspired by?
The one that told the truth. I hate to say it that way, because when you think about it, it's not politicians, it's not business owners, it's not any of those things. It's like I said, my father is my hero and he's my leader, right? And he's still with me, but he taught me right and wrong, and he taught me all those things. To be candid, I don't watch the news because I don't like watching what's going on in the world. Right. It's never, hey, a unicorn was found. Everything's great.
Yeah.
It's, shootings and, all these things. So I really don't care much about following leaders. They're Pied Pipers that have an agenda like everybody else. And, I got clients to onboard and people to listen to and conversations to have. And, my father and my mother are my leaders and who I follow. It's amazing that he's still with me. He's 87 years old, and things he told me when I was 12, I'm just now learning to understand. So the lessons you learned a long time ago are the ones that are still guiding me now. I have 5 kids, and I don't know how he did it with us, but now I know, right? So
yeah,
unfortunately,
that's awesome.
An unorthodox answer to your question.
No, but you know what? It's important to kind of point out that you respect people who are transparent and honest, essentially. And that's who you like to work with the most.
Right.
That's great. Look, I want to thank Rick Burgess, CEO of Forms Logic, for being on this episode of The Customer Wins. Go check out Rick's website at formslogic.com or even formslogic.biz, you might see in the URL. And don't forget to check out quickforms.com, where we take the work out of paperwork. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. We'll click the like button, share this with someone, and even subscribe to our channels for future episodes of The Customer Wins. Rick, thank you so much for joining me today.
Pleasure was all mine, Rich.
Thanks for listening to the Customer Wins podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.